Yate, good afternoon. I am Jennifer Wheeler, and I am one of the people involved in this project. Yo den ensle Kenya ani da che do bashin twedichi ni ya da shinale koda ke halando e yisi nasha. I am very thankful to be here and excited, and I want to thank Ine and all of the people involved in this year's symposium. We are quite happy to be back again. We were here a couple years ago regarding the Star Wars movie that was dubbed in Navajo, which Joe and I also worked on at that time. So this time, Joe and I are the two translators who worked on the script of Finding Nemo. And Joe will introduce himself.
My name is Joe Key. Good afternoon. It's good to be here in Albuquerque. I'd like to say thank you to the wonderful invitation once again to this conference symposium, and it's been a couple years since we've been here, and we have had quite a busy couple of years since then working on this project. My job today, I teach the Navajo language at the University of New Mexico in Gallup, at the campus in Gallup, New Mexico. And Jennifer and I have quite an extensive background in teaching Diné language, and I think we have at least a combined 40 years of experience in teaching our Navajo language, both at the grade school level for Jennifer, also at the college level for us as well, and high school. And it's good to be here, and we have been looking forward to presenting and giving you some information about our work with Finding Nemo. I just introduced myself with my 4 clans. I'm Blackstreet Wood People clan, born for the Mexican People clan. My maternal grandfathers are of the Big Water, and my paternal grandfather, Coyote Pass Jemez People clan. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us.
So I think, how many of you were in attendance when we presented on the Star Wars movie dubbed in Navajo? Quite a few of you. Good. Okay, thank you. And for those of you who are new to what the Navajo Nation Museum does, we welcome you. Like I said, at the time the Navajo Nation Museum produced the Star Wars A New Hope, is it episode 4, in Navajo. Joe and I worked on that. There were 5 of us translators who worked together in one weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and we worked 8 a.m. to past midnight each day for 3 days, and we translated that script at that time. So that's when we presented here a couple of years ago. We are back today to share with you the second project that the Navajo Nation Museum successfully completed. But however, what's going to make it hard for Joe and me here today is that the movie is not out yet. It will be soon, very soon. As far as the official release date, that's not even determined yet. But we are done with the entire recording process, and we'll explain that to you in a bit. So the Navajo Nation Museum, Manuelito Wheeler is the director, and like Ine said, he couldn't be here today. But Joe and I, like Joe said, we are, Joe teaches at UNM Gallup. We are not employees of the museum, but we are helping them with various projects. So as far as general information, the Navajo Nation Museum is located in Window Rock, Arizona. And the museum, of course, like any organization, has its mission and goals and philosophy. So the Navajo Nation Museum has as probably its most important goal as an organization is to help promote, preserve, revitalize, and maintain the Diné language and culture, including history. So one of the projects that they focus on is language retention, revitalization, preservation. And this second movie that they're dubbing in Navajo is Finding Nemo, and Joe and I helped with that project again. So basically, according to the 2010 census, U.S. Census, which was, about 5 years ago, the Navajo Nation population at that time was a little over 300,000. So again, we have to look at what the actual demographics of that is. I mean, what makes a person say that he or she is Navajo on that census? So a Navajo that declares Navajo on the U.S. Census can mean that that person is full-blooded Navajo, both parents being Navajo. Then again, you have a Navajo who might be half. One parent is Navajo. So as far as those specific demographics, those aren't known, but in general, at that time, 5 years ago, there were about 300,000 of us Navajo people. And we are quite sure there are plenty more now. At that time, according to the census, about half of the Navajo people who declared being Navajo during the census 2010 declared to speak Navajo. And these are not just Navajo people living on the reservation because, like natives always say, we're everywhere. All Native people, we live everywhere, right? We're not just on our reservation. Particularly, a lot of our younger people are across the country and across the world even. So half of the people in 2010 declared to be speaking Navajo. Now, out of that, how many speakers of Navajo can read and write Navajo? That's even a lesser percent. So that's kind of the overall language information of our people. So today, 5 years later, there are more of us, and there are more initiatives, more programs, more resources that we have on the reservation in regards to language preservation and helping schools provide Navajo language, culture, history through K through 12, as well as college and universities. Not only that, but even down to the little ones, Head Start programs, they are, it seems that they're working more, they have more force, more resources in helping teach our language to our younger people. So that's kind of general information about why the Navajo Nation Museum supports those initiatives, and they do actually produce these projects. So, and I know that Joe has a lot of the Navajo student speakers at the UNM Gallup campus as well who enjoy taking his classes. So that's kind of the general information about the Navajo Nation Museum. So at this time, I'll give Joe time to explain the beginning of what we're going to share with you here.
Thank you. Back in 2013, the first movie that was dubbed into the Navajo language was Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. And Star Wars is quite, it's not a familiar movie to many Navajo people as well as many Native people across the nation, but it's very popular outside of in contemporary and a larger society. However, for the many grandmothers, grandfathers, even parents, the young people, Many of them had not been born at the time when the first Star Wars was released in 1977. So, one of the positive feedbacks that the people who watched the Navajo dub Star Wars was that now we have a greater understanding of what the movie is about. We watched Star Wars. I didn't really follow the storyline at all from beginning to end, and I would be lost in the middle of it, towards the end of it. So people didn't really pay attention to the storyline itself, and it would be shown in theaters, in schools. But when they saw the Navajo dub version of Star Wars, they said, wow, that's what the story is about, because we translated virtually every word that can be translated within the dialogue and throughout the entire movie. And we introduced some new terms, for example, Beishtin for lightsaber, and then may the force be with you. We associated that in a positive way for the younger generation to connect with the older generation as well, meaning that is how we translated that, meaning that things that are good and bad, things that will get in your way in life, may you prevail and overcome the obstacles that you may be confronted with. So it had many positive responses, especially among the young people as well. And they would be walking around in their schools, and when they watch it at the chapter houses and in their homes, and they would repeat some of the phrases that we came up with in the movie. And I know many stories that it had a very positive effect on them, because it was the first time that a major motion picture was ever translated into a native language. And this movie had some very positive results. And so Finding Nemo, culturally speaking, a culture, a society, a group of people that live underwater. I know we as Native people have many very enriching stories about and based upon oral tradition. And some people have many clans connected to the meaning of water and how the water beings are associated to their clanship and their cultures, and how many stories are derived based upon water. And we always say that in Navajo language, "To'e ina'ata," water is life, take care of it, and your body needs water. And based upon that, we took the approach to be very respectful and mindful of the many cultural teachings associated with water. And that I'm sure many people have thought about, wait a minute, there's water here. There's a story. There's a story about a family, about a culture, a society that live underwater. And they're speaking Navajo. And I'm sure grandmother will look at the screen and say, wow, that fish, the fish is speaking. And they'll find ways that they can gather their grandchildren together in one place and let them know and help them to revive stories. And that was one of the motivations behind Finding Nemo, and it was very exciting. I like to, one of the main stars of Finding Nemo is to locate the Nemo. We wanted a kid that could be able to speak Navajo language fluently, and a kid that who would speak Navajo fluently. He or she did not have to know how to read or write Navajo, because all of the dubbing, the adaptation aspect of the dubbing of this movie, the recording would already be placed for this young person. It's very difficult to find young Navajo people, especially on the Navajo reservation, that speak fluent Navajo language. And then we also consider who is a native speaker. And so we had an audition call for some young Navajo people that can possibly take the lead role in The Little Fish, Nemo. And we found him. And I will share a little bit more after we watched this clip. This clip, it was presented on CBS Evening News just this late summer, and we'll give you an idea. And I will share a little story about the young kid that plays Nemo.
The language of the Navajo tribe helped win World War II when the famed Navajo wind talkers relayed messages to Allied forces in code the Japanese were never able to break. Now, some 70 years later, a movie studio is part of an effort to keep the Navajo language alive, enlisting the help of a friendly little fish.
We're rolling. Go for it.
11-year-old Quentin Keene is one of the Navajo Nation's youngest fluent speakers. The language, which he learned from his grandmother, is giving a new voice to one of Disney Pixar's most popular films.
I just wanted to make this Nemo movie to get my native language out.
The Navajo edition of Finding Nemo is more than entertainment. It's part of an ongoing effort to preserve the traditional language of the nation's largest Native American tribe.
It's got a little staccato pace to it. There's a lot of little breaks in the language. So that makes it difficult for lip sync.
Can I retry that?
Rick Dempsey, Senior Vice President for Character Voices at Disney, is working in collaboration with the Navajo Nation Museum. The studio held auditions on the reservation, but had a hard time casting the title role.
There's not a lot of opportunities, in terms of how many kids to pull from, because there aren't that many kids that are fluent in the language.
A majority of the fluent speakers are 40 and above.
Manny Wheeler is the museum director in Window Rock, New Mexico.
Our oral tradition really is very dynamic, very descriptive, and they're great stories. And so here now, this is the new age, and these are the new stories.
2 years ago, Lucasfilm sponsored a Navajo translation of the original Star Wars. The film was a huge success. 13-year-old Adrian Hardy went to the premiere with his grandmother.
I usually speak to my friends in Navajo to get them more interested in Navajo.
He says the films are a good way to keep young people interested in the language.
We're helping save a language. We're giving a booster to Navajo language. We're trying to make a difference for our Navajo people and trying to help the culture survive. And it will. I'm really optimistic about that.
With help from the next generation and a little orange fish.
I hope you enjoyed that. Like I said, Quentin, thank you. Quentin Kine, he, at the time, he just celebrated his 12th birthday last month. So he's 12 now. At the time of the recording, he was 11. But just a little bit of a background of Quentin. Quentin hails from Steamboat, Arizona. And his mother, who is in her 50s today, and her mother grew up with the language. So Quentin's grandmother is a monolingual speaker. She is an elderly Navajo woman from Steamboat, Arizona, and she speaks very little of the English language, and Quentin grew up in this home. Quentin had access to waking up to his grandmother speaking Navajo every single morning throughout the day before he went to school and upon returning home from school. So Quentin was around the Navajo language every single day while his mother was working. So he spent a large part of his young life with his elderly grandmother. And he also listened to the tribal radio station, KTNN, listening to the commercials and advertisements in the Navajo language. And when we would visit with Quentin as he was growing up, he would be practicing recording into a recorder an advertisement that he heard on the tribal radio station, and his grandmother would be sitting right next to him. So it takes that commitment, it takes that much time to learn and also to retain a language, and Quentin was very fortunate to be doing so. However, many of our young people today do not have access or are around their grandparents on a daily basis. And Quentin's level of fluency of the Navajo language is that of an adult learner, because when we were recording the Navajo component of Finding Nemo, Quentin was understanding every word that was being presented to him. And every now and then he would question it and say, wait a minute, don't you say this way or that way? So he had his own. And he's very fortunate. And I think we have lost sight of quite a bit of that. And our history, I think, has a lot to do with that, and that there's a disconnect between the younger and the older generation. But this is just one example, and he's one of the main motivating forces behind the making of this movie.
So the actual process to make a movie like this, to dub it into your own native language, is obviously a lot of work, and it takes a long time. The process itself, from the time the Navajo Nation Museum, Manuelito Wheeler and his team made agreements and partnership with Disney and Pixar, from that point, that in itself took them a while too. So as soon as they got the okay for the project, then that's when we came in, and Joe and I started translating the script. So the Finding Nemo script was longer as far as text. It has way more dialogue than the Star Wars script. You know, Star Wars has a lot of action, right? A lot of scenes where the characters are fighting and they're traveling and flying through space and so on and so forth. In Finding Nemo, it seems that every second there's dialogue. They're talking all the way through the movie till the end. And that's what made it a bit more complicated for us to translate. It was way more time consuming. So it was really Joe and I who sat together again. It took us about 3 days as well too, right, to translate the script. And of course it did take longer and more work, less breaks. But in the end, we were pretty happy with the way we translated the story. And where it says Adaptation of Translation, if you're not familiar with that, what that means is that the way Joe and I translated Finding Nemo, we had to make that adaptation where we get into the studio, and when you watch the movie, let's say one scene where Nemo is talking. So when you see Nemo talking, you see his mouth. Even though it's animation, you can see his lips, moving, closing. So what Joe and I translate for that particular line, even just a phrase or a few words, the way we translate it in Navajo has to match the way Nemo's English lines are. So when his mouth is closing, what he's saying in Navajo, it has to be closing as well. So in your native language, when you translate something like an English word, even one word, in your native language, it's probably a little longer, right? So let's say in English, you have a word, maybe that's 2 or 3 syllables in English. So to translate it, I'm sure it's the same for all of you in your native languages. For us in Navajo, that one word that's 3 syllables can be 5 to 10 syllables because our language is descriptive, because this English word and concept did not exist in our Navajo language and Navajo concept, but it does now. So when you do that, when that Nemo's talking, what we translated into Navajo, it has to match Nemo's lips and it has to fit that time frame. Let's say it's 2 seconds. It has to fit that. So Joe and I recorded the entire movie. So we know every part of that movie now, everything that every character says, and we split it that way so that we took turns helping one another record the entire movie. That's adaptation. So what we translated, we have to edit it. So when Nemo's lips are moving and what we said in Navajo is longer, we have to cut it down. We have to even redo that line of translation. So it's a lot of work and it's quite challenging mentally. It makes you really think, and Joe and I just have to be on the ball right there, right? What about this? What about that? So it's a lot of work. So the recording that we do of the movie, of the Navajo version, that's when the auditions happen. So Navajo Nation Museum hosted auditions and Navajo people from all over came and they auditioned for certain roles. And that's where they demonstrate how well they can speak Navajo. So all of the recordings are sent back to Disney, and the people there at Disney, they're professionals. Yes, they don't speak Navajo, but they listen out for the tone of the voice to see if it matches, these characters in the movie, and that's how they choose them. And then Navajo Nation Museum, they contact the different people, Navajo people that tried out, and that's how they're contacted. So when the people that are selected for these roles, they come into the studio. We recorded at Knife Wing Studio in Gallup. So when these people come to record there, we give them the written script, because not all Navajo people, especially our generation and older, they don't know how to read and write Navajo. Many Navajo people don't know how to read and write Navajo. So we give them the written the script. But if they can't read it, that's okay, because it's going to be on audio. So they hear Joe or me saying all their lines. So if they can't read, then they really just have to, say what they hear, and they basically repeat us. But they are the people that incorporate the acting. They have to have all their acting skills and so on. So that's what adaptation is, and it makes it easier for these people who get selected for the roles to do their voiceover, to do their recording. So recording happened, it all happened at Gallup at Knife Wing Studio, and like I said, we just finished, when was it, last week? 2 weeks ago. We finished the entire recording of the movie, and it's been sent back to Disney, and they're doing their part over there. So really what is going to happen next is just the minor editing that's going to take place, and then they're going to produce the movies, and like we said, it should be out soon. As far as the deadline, we don't know yet. So, but we do have some samples to show you.
Now there's in one part of the movie where marlin meets up with some of the parent fish that are played in the beginning, there's a word in there that's used in the script. And the word is clowny. Now, we could have used the word itself since its name and that we see. We could have, at first, we just put down clowny. Okay, we'll use that. But then again, how do you explain, for example, this word to grandma or grandpa? A young kid will certainly understand, and they'll think of clown. So we said, let's come up with a name. And this is just one example that you will hear of a word that you will hear being used in the movie. And this word, the word clowny, which means one who jokes, laughs, and teases. So we came up with a Navajo name. Okay, what is it that we can use? Okay, a clown laughs. Is very funny. So let's make sure that we use the prefix tlo, which means laughter. For example, one might say tlo, 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 anatlo. He or she is laughing. It's a verb. And then, since it's a verb and then clowny is a name, is a noun, and then we said, okay, let's add a suffix or an enclitic to the word, which makes this verb, tlo, a noun. So we added two I's to tlo, and we needed to match the two-syllable word of clowny with the word tlohi. So that is our one example of our translation that we did for this part of the movie. Now, the other one is anemone. First, we had to look this up in the dictionary, okay, because we don't really have this on the Navajo reservation anywhere or anywhere near us. And then our oral tradition and cultural sacred stories have mentions of beautiful flowers, beautiful stones, jewels, even underwater. And that's what anemone. And this gave us the definition of what anemone represented. So we came up with the name. Okay, the definition have plants. Okay, we call that ch'il. And then there's also a mention of many plants. So we came up with many. And then place, it's an area. And then we have a prefix, ha or ho. And of course, the stem, e. There's your double I's again. It's a four syllables. And then in Navajo, we played around with the prefixes that we translated individually, and we put all four together to make ch'ilhalani. So ch'ilhalani. So whenever you hear anemone in the movie, in the English version, then in Navajo, you will hear ch'ilhalani. And it has so much more meaning to us in our language. And as Native people, we know that our language, once it's translated, it loses quite a bit of its meaning, its taste, and its visual effects. And we want it to stay as close to what our eyes want to see and our ears want to hear. And that's how we are as visual learners as well. Now, another example. This is where we have an example of, there's a scene that we can see here. We're going to show you a clip in English. It's very fast. Just observe the mentions of many scientific terms that the teacher in the movie at the school, his name is Mr. Ray. And we had to find that one actor, that person who can also act, who can also read and listen and then sing at the same time. And just take a look at all the scientific terms there. How do we translate that?
Because Joe and I are not scientists, we had a big dictionary when we were translating the script. So like every of these scientific terms, we had to look them up. So every one we did look them up, and we did record them. So more or less we generalized. We're not going to translate every scientific term. Again, that's going to be a full page right there just for that one line. So we generalized a lot of the scientific terms. So again, we you know, for the Navajo attendees here, we can't share that with you because it's all about suspense. You got to watch the movie when it comes out.
Japanese Fast Play. Your movie and a selection of bonus features will begin automatically.
Oh, okay. So, are there any questions at this point? Yeah. Yes. 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 So the elders who will be watching this movie are really they're the group of people that we consider first, because just like we did with Star Wars, there are certain words and phrases, mostly words, mostly names of places and people. So in English, what we call the proper nouns, those are the actual names that they're called by or with. So in Navajo, we kept some of those as well, because we know that, like Joe said, the younger generation, the younger Navajo kids, they'll easily understand what we're talking about. But it's the elders who will be watching this that we're trying to generalize. You know, like I said, that's why we had a big dictionary with us. And even though we looked up every single word, for example, all the scientific terms, you know, we need to generalize it to where our elders, you know, grandpa and grandpa that come to watch this movie can understand what Mr. Ray, the teacher, is singing about.
H2O intolerant.
I'm obnoxious.
Oh, let's name the zones, the zones, the zones. Let's name the zones of the open sea.
Mr. Ray!
Come on, Nemo.
Oh, you better stay with me.
Epipelagic, mesopelagic, bathyol, episcopalagic. All the rest are too deep for you and me to see.
So that's an example. So yes, all of that is in Navajo. And the person who sang this, who got the role of Mr. Ray, did an awesome, awesome job. So we can't wait for you to see it.
And then we're going to show you another scene where one of the characters, he's a shark. His name is Bruce. And the words, when we first saw this, this is one of the highlights, I think, one of the very catchy lines, and we wanted to make sure that people leave watching the Navajo dub, Finding Nemo, with keeping this in mind, where he will say that he's a nice shark, not a mindless eating machine. If I am to change this image, I must first change myself. Fish are friends, not food. And that's the really catchy phrase in Navajo that you will see as well. But this is the English version of that scene.
Wonder where my... And I'm still starving.
We almost had to have a feeding frenzy.
Come on, let's get this over with.
Right then, the meeting has officially come to order. Let us all say the pledge. I am a nice shark, not a mindless eating machine. If I am to change this image, I must first change myself. Fish are friends, not food.
Except stinking golf.
What is a mindless eating machine? How do you translate that? So when we got the Disney script, the original script, it's quite complex, the script, when you're looking at the page. So the dialogue of the characters, they're on the left side, and then on the far right column, they have descriptions of these phrases, what you have in the English version. So on the far right side of that page, you'll see a description of what that means. You know, what did the writers intend to mean by that, with all of these characters saying their various lines. So we had to really read through that, and it was a lot of reading, a lot of research. That way, then we can translate accordingly, again, in general, for our elders, our grandmothers, and our grandfathers who will be watching this.
And then there's a scene, a very interesting scene, where the voice doesn't, it's where the fish, toward the end of the scene, where they try to escape from the tank, and there's a new system that is placed inside of the fish tank, and there's a character by Peach, one of the fish, the starfish that is stuck to against the glass wall of the tank, and she reads the instructions that come with this new kit that's called the Aquascum 2003. We even have that translated, and it's a very interesting translation. And you'll see Peach here recited in English, but it's the Aquascum 2003 is an all-purpose, self-cleaning, maintenance-free salt water purifier that is guaranteed to even extend the life of your aquarium fish. And this happened in about 4 or 5 seconds. And then in Navajo, our description was quite long, but we had to shorten it to fit the time in English.
Dolphins!
Morning. It's morning, everyone. Today's the day. The sun is shining, the tank is clean, and we are getting out of... The tank is clean. The tank is clean!
But how?
Boss must have installed it last night while we were sleeping.
What are we gonna do?
What's it say, Peach? I can't hear you, Peach.
The Aquascum 2003 is an all-purpose, self-cleaning, maintenance-free salt water purifier that is guaranteed to even extend the life of your aquarium fish.
Stop it!
The Aquascum is programmed to scan your tank environment every 5 minutes.
What is...
So just how fast she said that is how fast the Navajo translated version is. And again, the woman who played Peach, the one who describes the Aquascum, she did a very good job at that. Actually, she had that for homework, huh? Mm-hmm. She came like Thursday or Friday evening to record her part, and we got up to there, and she got stuck. She's a fluent speaker, but she could not fit all of that as fast as how Peach just said it here. So she requested that she take that back for homework, and she recorded it. We gave her the script, and it took her a few days. She came back, and then she nailed it. So it's a lot of work.
Now, there are quite a few accents that are evident throughout the movie. Now, the late Navajo actor, man by the name of Vincent Craig, he did a lot of comedy, and he would imitate various languages. However, they were all in the Navajo language and sounding like an accent from France or Australia, or even a surfer accent. So these are just a few examples. We had to find that person that there's a fish character in the tank who has a French accent, and his name is Jacques. And we had to find that Navajo actor, the speaker, who can also have a French accent. And I think he'll do very well. And then another, the dentist, has an Australian accent, and you'll hear Navajo in Australian accent as well. And then we wanted Crush. He's a turtle, and he's a very cool turtle, and a lot of people like him. And he has what we refer to as a surfer, how a surfer might speak. And he's very cool. He's a dad. And we wanted to maintain that charisma, that acting that the Crush produced in English. And we found the actor who would do that as well. And he's very magnificent. And then there's a lobster who produces a Boston, an accent from that region. And it's very interesting how we can incorporate Navajo language and then use our language, our own language, to even produce Italian as well as the American accent as well. So various accents were used throughout the movie, but we made sure that Navajo was maintained. The language itself did not lose any of its juice, to where we maintain reverence of the language throughout the entire movie. Now, here are a few examples of children. Children, the median age of Navajo is in the early 20s, and the vast majority of the speakers are 50 years and over. So the majority of the 300,000 Navajo people in terms of population that we shared with you earlier, the median speaker, the average speaker of a Navajo is age 50 and above. However, we are a very young population, and it was very difficult to find young Navajo children who were able to speak Navajo fluently. Quentin was an exception, and there are some. There's a handful of them who are fluent speakers who can carry a conversation entirely in Navajo. And then there are many who can understand Navajo and who can read Navajo. Now, these are some, we found very good speakers of Navajo language with these children characters. For example, we have Pearl, the octopus, and she's very funny in the movie. And we wanted young kids. The directors and also the Navajo Nation Museum made it a stipulation to where that we will not have adult actors playing young children's role. We wanted children to play children parts throughout the movie, and we did that. And then these are just a few examples of some of the characters that were filled by our own young, very young and talented Navajo children. Now, one thing that our native language also talks about is we have our own expressions in Navajo, in our language, in our native languages. Oomp is very different in Navajo. A gas is very different in Navajo, and there's quite a few throughout the movie. Even a fall, a bump into someone, bump into another person, that sounds different in our own language, and it's funnier. And we maintain that throughout the movie as well. So an English gas may come out a little differently than a Navajo gas in our movie, and we see that, and it's quite funny as well.
And we also want to acknowledge Tsahotso de Neba Oltka, which is the Navajo Language Immersion School, part of the Window Rock Unified School District. Most of the children characters in the movie were from Deneba Oltka, and they did an amazing job. So every character that you see in Finding Nemo, who is a small child, most of them were students from Tsahotso Deneba Oltka. And they can read well, they can pronounce words well. So it was a lot of work, but they had fun and they did an amazing job. The young kids who came who are not attending Dineba Oltka, they did have some trouble. They did good. I mean, in the end, they did good, but it was quite time-consuming to help them, to coach them in how to say certain words and how to do certain pronunciations. There's a younger boy who was recording a line, and I remember the line says, the little kid says, "Shahani," you know, not me. So in Navajo, that's how we say that. Shih is me or I. So when you say shahani, that's saying not me, you know, exclude me, not me, is negating it. But the way the boy was saying it, when he was recording, he kept saying, shahani. So in Navajo, I'm sure you have that in your own native language too, but we combine Navajo and English together, right? So in Navajo, we can say shahani. Shih is my possessive first person, my honey. So I was trying to coach him saying, shahani, you know, he's kind of in this, I forget the scene now. Shahani, not me, don't do that. It's not my fault, is what he's saying. So I was trying to coach him to say that. And he kept saying, shahani. And I said, no, listen to yourself, listen to yourself. You're saying shahani, you're saying my honey. You know, I was teasing him. I said, don't think about your honey. She's at school. You know, you need to get your line done here. Shahani. So even that, you know, is a good example of how our young kids are still learning, you know, speaking Navajo. And the slightest mispronunciation can be quite bad. It can go wrong. You know, you don't want your child to say something else when they're intending to say something else. So that was funny. He was a good sport about it, and he was teasing his mom about it. So. But that's an example of how the young kids were getting challenged in pronouncing certain Navajo words.
Thank you very much. Please accept our warm thanks for your presentation and your project.